Well, tell me, mama, what's going on? Tell me, darling, what's going on?
Welcome back, everybody. Bacon and Egg Show, episode number 7, May 30th, I think, 2020. Who knows at this point? It's all blurred together anyway, but Jay, what's going on?
Hey, it's not a lot, man. Basically, the only reason I know what day it is anymore is because I know what day we have to do this show. So, I mean, this is keeping me sane in many ways, but also keeping me on top of what day it is. So, for those of you that don't know what day it is, I'm with you.
Yeah, join the club. Yeah, I just know it's Saturday exactly because it's when we record. So,
that's about it.
Wish every day could be Saturday, but that's a different.
That's
for a different day.
Yeah.
Well,
Maybe
we've
Saturday.
happy Saturday. It's a beautiful day here in Austin Metro. Hope wherever you are watching or listening to this show is beautiful too, or at least not getting hit with all the hail that we had this past week here. So
yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah, no thanks. Well, let's jump into the cup of coffee. We got another week of not a lot of sports actually happening, but a lot of news coming down, and let's jump right into it. Jay, what you got?
So, as many of you know, Governor Abbott said pro sports are good to go in June, which is the first time I heard that out in my head, I'm thinking, oh, well, that's a little bit away at least. And then I realized, oh, no, it's 4 days away. So, so Governor Abbott has announced professional sports can return in June. Outdoor stadiums can host up to 25% of the normal capacity. And indoor stadiums do not qualify for this declaration, I guess, if you will. So has to be an outdoor stadium. So, Kerry, my question to you is, when you talk about season ticket holders, when you talk about just the general public, who's going to decide who gets to go to these games? Like, who's going to make that decision?
That's something I've been thinking about. I think it was earlier this week, Iowa State University announced basically their plan for the fall. And their stadium in Ames holds a little over 61,000 people. They announced that for their home football games this season, 30,000 is the cap. They're not going one person higher than 30,000. So they're going a little under 50%. As of the time that was announced, they had 22,000 renewed season tickets. So I know we're talking about Iowa State, but they've also been one of the more progressive universities since this whole coronavirus thing in terms of how they've handled employees, how they've handled their programs and whatnot. So it's interesting to see them kind of be in the forefront of this. To get back to your question though, like about who do you decide gets to go? Well, right. Iowa State's in a kind of, they kind of have the advantage of only having 22,000 season ticket holders because they go, okay, every season ticket holder gets to go to the game and we might have a few tickets here and there that we can sell. Okay. A place like Texas, a place like A&M, Oklahoma, name any big school that has a massive stadium, I think it's going to be a much more complicated deal. I think we discussed this. I don't know if we discussed this on the show before, or maybe have hit on it, but I think out of Texas A&M's 100,000 plus seat stadium, Kyle Field, I think they have 85,000 season ticket holders. If they're restricted to only 30 or 40,000, even 50,000 people, which is still a lot, 50,000 people in the stadium, what do you do about the other 35,000 season ticket holders? Who do you determine gets priority access? There's a lot of questions that I think are going to be interesting, but I guess kudos to Iowa State for getting out in front of this and handling it now. And I think more schools should be handling it that way instead of waiting until August or September to make this decision.
No, I agree. And that's one of those things where when you're deciding who gets to go, somebody's going to be upset. It doesn't matter. You're going to make some people mad. And that's one of those things where in the interest of safety, in the interest of laying out a plan and letting people know what is coming, to know what to expect, I think Iowa State is absolutely doing a wonderful job of getting out and just laying out that plan. It's what we all want to see. It's what we all want to see. It's, we'll touch later on how the NHL has laid out a plan, and that we want to see what's coming. Come up with a plan. I know there's a lot of uncertainties. I know there are not a lot of absolutes, but I think giving people an idea of what your plan is, being very transparent. Transparency is very key right now, and I think that if we see a lot more of that transparency, it will ease fans, it will ease the general public, it will ease all the people that really, really want sports to come back so badly. I think that will help people at least get a vision of what's to come.
Yeah, for sure. And it's going to be really fascinating because, and I know Texas doesn't quite have the marquee home game like the last couple seasons, whether it's LSU or USC or anything of that sort. What does this do to the secondary ticket market? If there's only 40,000 people allowed into a Texas football game, and you're one of those people that are a season ticket holder that has one of those tickets, how much can you sell that for? The demand will be a bit higher. And well, I mean, I guess it varies who wants to go sit in the stadium, but there's just there's a lot going on with this that, I think of all the leagues, and we'll get to this a little bit later, but it's interesting to see the NHL really kind of approach this, with a plan. The NFL is going to have to answer some questions soon about how they're going to sell tickets and how they're going to fill stadiums. I know, onto kind of one of our next notes here in the cup of coffee, like the European soccer leagues, La Liga in Spain, Serie A in Italy, and the English Premier League are all getting ready to restart. Really within the next 3 weeks, all of them are going to be starting back, and they've made it clear that there's not going to be anybody in the stadium. They're going to finish out the season that was remaining. So really, it is college football season in the NFL that are the next up that are going to have to answer this fan question, and there's a lot of money that they're going to have to leave on the table to in the name of safety and to actually do this thing the right way.
It's got to be done that way. There's not another option. I mean, we hear a lot about these regulations that are still say, okay, we still want you to practice social distancing from people that are not in your household. We still recommend that you wear masks. And I just don't think that that's going to be able to happen. All of those things are going to be able to happen when we get 50. If Kyle Field, let's say they do say 50,000 is the number, the social distancing goes out the window at that point. It's almost not physically possible at that point. So I'm anxious to see. I know people will go to especially at Texas, for Texas games, people will go to these games. There will be people in this stadium no matter what, but I know that I'm not going to be one of those people this season. That's a choice that I already know in my head right now. I'm not going to be prepared to go into any area where there's that many people and be comfortable with it. But I know there will be some people that are. That's their choice, but it's going to be very interesting to see how all of this unravels in terms of who gets to go, who has access to those tickets immediately, and the secondary market as well for people like me who I'm not a season ticket holder. Kerry, you've been a season ticket holder recently, and whether or not you choose to renew is, that's a topic that I know has been weighing on your mind over the past couple of months. So,
yeah,
I mean, as a season ticket holder with the option to renew, what's going through your mind?
Well, I opted to not renew for this coming season for reasons beyond, the safety aspect, I guess you'll say, but also, I mean, it just, with everything kind of going on, it just seemed kind of trivial. It seemed kind of, it just didn't feel quite right spending that type of money on football tickets that may or may not, there be a season. So there's various reasons, but like from a pure game attendance standpoint, I mean, I completely agree. It's interesting to see kind of how things are opening up now with restaurants and bars and kind of getting out in public and things feeling kind of like they're returning to the previous state. But it's a different thing to go to like a patio at a restaurant for happy hour where there might be 10 people adequately spread out, the proper social distancing measures, and everybody's outside, and that's it. That's, to me, that's a different thing than trying to pack 50,000 people into a stadium. And you got to have temperature checks when you go in. You got to have there's so many logistical things that just don't exactly make me feel excited for the game day experience. There's no tailgating, if there's no Longhorn city limits, if there's no Bevo Boulevard, all those kinds of things, like, kind of, what's the, why, you know, why push me to go down there?
Yeah, for those people that go down there for the experience, they want to be on campus, they want to tailgate, they want to the Longhorn city limit stuff that Chris Del Conte has created with the Bevo Boulevard, those sort of pre-game festivities to really make the atmosphere feel like
Yeah.
a must attend. It's a, I went down there with you a couple of times. I've gone down there on a number of occasions to Longhorn city limits and never had a bad time.
Yeah.
Boulevard's always, it just creates that environment you want to be around, and not having that definitely takes away from the experience for me. I'll watch football if it was played on Jupiter. I wouldn't care. I would watch it, but
Yeah.
it does completely take away and sort of rob you from that game day like experience.
Yeah, and I mean, I can only speak for myself. I mean, in terms of, I guess my decision making on the season tickets, but like, one of the big things for me is that experience. It's, being an alum and going back to campus and like being around all of that, and none of that's going to be there. It's just not. I know we've talked about students being back on campus. Maybe we haven't. I mean, I don't know if we hit on that in the previous shows, but students being back on campus for the fall. But like, it's just, to me, it just doesn't feel like the right year to do it. And
No, I'm with you. I completely understand where you're coming from there, man. And you add all of those things on top of the fact that we're not sure if Tom Herman is the guy at Texas still. You know what I mean? Like, there's been those uncertainties anyway. Would I want to invest my money into a Tom Herman product? And at this rate, you would say no, judging by the whole thing. So that's another conversation, and we're going to touch on Herman and the Horns a little bit later on in the show. We're going to, during our We're Back segment, we're going to bring on a special guest to discuss some Horn stuff. So we're looking forward to that. So stick around for that. But yeah, so anyways, it's going to be interesting to see how this develops in that, with all of these, who will go to these games and how those tickets will be dispersed. And I'm just happy that some schools are actually putting out these plans. So we'll see where that goes.
Absolutely. And on a related note there, still here in the cup of coffee, another thing that we wanted to touch on, in addition to the European soccer leagues coming back and restarting to finish out their seasons, Abbott and the announcement for for professional sports in Texas, you also have the NBA. We'll get to the NHL stuff because they're the one that has the most concrete of a plan at this point. We'll get to that in a few, but the NBA has announced a target date. I think July 30th is the target date to, and again, we don't quite know the details, but they at least have a date out there over what kind of form we might have an NBA season. At Disney, of all the Magical Kingdom, will be hosting, I guess, the rest of the NBA season in one location. Is that your understanding, Jay?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've discussed this a little bit on the show before, how you can go out there and you can get, with the setup that they have, I think it's something like 12 games going on at the same time, 10, 11, 12, something in that range. So it seems like a really perfect setup for that. I think we've said on this show that we thought that they were going to get it done. The NBA was going to get it done and finish the season, and it looks like they are. But the interesting thing to me on this, Damian Lillard said, who's a star player for the Portland Trailblazers, said he's not interested in playing the rest of this season if Portland isn't in the playoffs, if it isn't in the playoff hunt. So that's something that I hadn't considered in terms of these teams and these leagues coming back, is if they're out of contention, are some of these bigger names going to take a risk on getting hurt or anything like that, to play in meaningless games in unsure times.
Well, that's one of the interesting things in the NHL plan that we'll get to that addresses that. I have to say I don't have any issue with what Lillard says or what he said about that. I think given everything that we know, if the Trailblazers aren't going to be in a playoff spot in whatever form the NBA presents it, what is the use for him or any of the other Trailblazers to risk their health and all the like? Why? I mean, these guys should just go play basketball and get paid and all that. Well, I mean, for what at that point? Like, don't get paid. Hey, don't send me those game checks, but I'm not showing up.
Yeah,
Like, there's no point in risking myself or my family.
If you don't want to play, I have no problem with that. If that's a choice that a player would decide to make, if they were a superstar, if they're the last guy on the end of the bench, I think that there needs to be an understanding that there will be people that won't want to play, and it's not. Again, it doesn't matter if it's Damian Lillard or if it's, whoever's the last guy, like I said. So I think that's it. But when I was glad that he spoke out about it, because it was a perspective that I hadn't thought of, and it really made me think from a player's eyes, I guess. So no, I'm with you. I don't have any issue with it, but they're going to get that season done, and it's whether they're just keeping all of the families. I mean, basically, everybody will be in the same thing, in the same place. For the families will stay separated, I guess, but the players will all be together. Anyways, they're going to try to make it work, and I think that they will. So I'm looking forward to that.
I like the idea. I mean, talk about having a really kind of controlled environment, and I think it's great. I hope it works out. I'd love it.
Yeah.
Related to that, let's transition quickly into Major League Baseball's situation. Different from the NBA and the NHL in that the season was just about to start, and so there's nothing on the books yet for the 2020 Major League Baseball season. And this isn't an issue of coming back to just finish out some games and finish out a postseason and call it a year. What is going on with Major League Baseball? There seems to be an issue over when there might be a season, if there's a season. I think you're more in tune with the dealings that are going on. What's going on with this?
They're asking for players to take pay cuts, which if you're playing, a lot of what I've heard is they would play half a season worth of games if they came back and were able to, on the timeline that they want. They're basically playing half of 81 games, half a season. So the players have already negotiated to take pay cuts, and now the owners are coming back and asking for them to agree to take even deeper cuts. And some of these are for some of the bigger contracts, are as much as 80% of their contracts that they're asking them to take pay cut on. And basically, players like Max Scherzer, who not only is one of the greatest pitchers of this generation, but is a very high-ranking member in the union, he's coming out and saying, why would we agree to these things? We've already agreed to take a pay cut according to the number of games we're going to play. Why would we agree to deeper cuts in our salaries? So basically, the point is they're so far apart right now on money that may even become the biggest obstacle in starting the Major League Baseball season, and not necessarily the safety precautions, because they just aren't even close enough to agree on how much money to go to the players. So that's going to be I understand the players needing to maybe take a little bit less money, having an understanding that there's not the revenue that's coming in isn't, there's a lot of factors that go into that. But basically, I don't know that this season, I think it's a coin flip on whether or not this season happens.
Yeah. I mean, if it's coming down to something like the Players Association and the owners battling over this, I'm more inclined to think that there won't be a season. I mean, if this was just something about how do we play games? Do we do something like the NBA and set up shop, at Disney World, where in a controlled environment, or, kind of what the NHL's idea is going to be. If it was something about that, I think they'd get it done. I have to say, I mean, I'm with the players on this. I mean, if they're telling you you're gonna only play 50% of the games, so you're gonna get paid 50% less, um, that's reasonable. But for the owners to come back in and kind of like want to chip away at that even more, and we're talking about owners that are, making they have plenty of money. Obviously, they own Major League Baseball franchises. Some of them got, are they going to cut the tax cuts that they got to build their stadiums in places like Miami and that kind of stuff? Like, are they going to, are those going to be cut for them? It's frustrating. I'm siding with the players on this. I think they do have a really strong union. The baseball, the MLB Players Union is probably one of the strongest. I mean, the strongest in sports.
Yeah,
But
I agree. That's absolutely the strongest union in professional sports. I agree.
yeah, and I think that they're going to fight this. I don't think they're going to budge. And it wouldn't surprise me if there's not a baseball season. But which is a shame because I know we all want baseball. But at the same time, you also don't want this just to be an excuse for the owners to just drive the truck over the players financially.
Yeah.
And I know they make a lot of money, but I mean, it's
billionaires fighting against millionaires, and that's the way, and that's the way a lot of people look at it, is like, well, you're already making so much money, so just take a bigger pay cut. And it's like, well, yeah, but those players deserve to be paid for their skill set, and they deserve to be paid according to their value, and their value is not what the owners are asking them to be paid at.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. The value relative to the product that you're being put out, or that's being put out, and that's where I think the biggest gap in understanding is.
Yeah, and I also think that how the owners treat the players is a reflection of how they treat the rest of the people in their organization. When this all happened, we heard about you hear about like Mark Cuban when this whole coronavirus thing started, the way that he treated employees of the Mavericks, which, from everybody down to the ushers and food service workers and stuff like that in Dallas, which also encouraged Tom Ghilardi, the owner of the Dallas Stars, to do the same. They share the building. They all took responsibility. And then you hear about other owners, that kind of drag their feet on it, like Tillman Fertitta and some other,
Shocking.
Yeah, shocker. So I think it is also a reflection of how they would treat the people in the rest of the organization and how they also treat people in the community and those different kinds of things. So, while it is billionaires and millionaires, it's just a bad look. It's a bad look for the owners. And I think it's just a poor reflection on them and how they just, want to treat everybody from the top down in their organization. So,
yeah, I'm with you on that for sure. Well, we've let's close out this cup of coffee now and move on. I know that we've been teasing it a little bit, but let's talk about the NHL's plan to get their season going again. So,
well, before we get to that,
yeah, go ahead.
Did you want to hit on the NFL, the NFL rule changes?
Yeah, man. Just real quickly, thanks, Kerry. I did want to touch on that. There were a few new rule changes that the NFL approved over the week. One of the things that was on the table that did not get approved is something that I was really disappointed about. But basically, there was a permanent expansion of the replay to include touchdowns and turnovers negated by penalty. There was an expansion of the defenseless player protection to kick and punt returners. They finally closed that loophole, that the Belichick loophole, in terms of manipulating the clock with multi dead ball fouls. To basically, he used that in a meaningless game against the Jets one season and ran an extra 40 seconds. They were winning like 33-0, and you ran off an extra 40 seconds. And then the camera goes to him. And he's got that Belichick smirk, that shit-eating grin. Like,
then Vrabel hits him with it in the playoffs.
Exactly, and he complained about it, and they're like, wait a minute.
You created this.
Yeah, this is you. But something that I'm a big fan of is the injured reserve with a designation to return. So if players have a big injury that is going to leave them out for 8 to 10 weeks, but gives them a chance to maybe come back at the end of the season, you can put them on the injured reserve, and it doesn't cost you a spot on your 53-man roster, but it allows you to fill that roster spot with somebody in the interim until that player comes back. And now you can do that with 3 players at any given time instead of 2. So expanding teams' ability to keep injured players on their roster, not only keep them on their roster, but allow for that roster spot, I should say, to not be eaten up by an injured player. So I'm a big fan of that. So the disappointment for me, Kerry, though, the proposed kick to replace, or the proposed rule to replace the onside kick. And I thought it was a great idea, and it got tabled this year. Did not get approved. The idea was to go 4th and 15 from your own 25, and if you get it, you keep the ball, and if you don't, then the other team obviously gets the ball right there on the 25-yard line. I thought it was a brilliant idea, but
it was perfect. I mean, I guess it's not surprising that they tabled it, but this would have been so great. I mean, onside kicks haven't, because what was it? Once there was the rule that, I guess I forget. You can catch me on this, but there was a rule change a few years ago regarding onside kicks that basically rendered them completely useless. Like, it went from having a marginal success rate to now none. Like, there hasn't been very many successful onside kicks over the last few years.
right.
But so why continue to do that when you can do something like bring your offense back out on the field? Here you go, 4th and 15 from your own 25. Try to keep the game alive. Like, put
Make it happen.
the game in the hands of your skill players and your superstars instead of special teams.
Instead of your kicker and all of the guys that are your backups playing on special teams, like you said. So, yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I thought that was a good opportunity to take a step forward.
Yeah.
In that, but that's all right. And then lastly, they got rid of that ridiculous pass interference review. The review isn't the ridiculous thing. It's that it never, like twice basically out of the whole season, did they overturn any calls. And the video evidence was there. It was clear that these are pass interference calls that were missed, and they never overturned them anyway. So Troy Vincent, who works in the NFL office, said basically that he admitted it was a failure. They failed on that, and they've nixed it completely. So,
yeah, they just had to let the anger in New Orleans die down a little bit after that missed call against the Rams 2 seasons ago. So, like, oh, okay, well, now that you aren't so mad about it anymore and choked against the Vikings again, here's a we're just going to pull back on that rule now, which was a shame, which that call was a joke to begin with. So I don't blame the people in New Orleans for being upset about that. But, it's the NFL. So, yeah, that onside kick one, it's always interesting to watch these changes in rules every season when they get together and kind of tweak things a little bit. It always ends up making kind of a bigger trickle down than we might think. I think that one, the IR thing is going to be interesting.
Oh, yeah. I think it's a great rule.
All right. Well, wrapped up for the cup of coffee there. So,
now let's close that up and move on.
So, so you wanted to talk about the NHL. As we mentioned before, kind of talking about with this coronavirus stuff and restarting leagues and getting things back going again, the NHL has been the first one to kind of actually have a concrete plan of action. For those that aren't aware, and I know it's probably quite a few, just because the NHL and the attention that it doesn't quite get. Basically, where the NHL left off, I think it was a handful of games left in the regular season. There was still some tight playoff spots to be determined. So typically the standard situation is there are 8 teams from each conference, the East and the West, that get in. Pretty standard. You get 16 teams throughout the entire NHL. In order to kind of mitigate, or in a sense of fairness, if you will, what the NHL has decided was at the end, the regular season's complete. It's done. There will not be any other regular season games that were scheduled to be played. Instead of 8 teams getting in from each conference, 12 teams are going to get in. So they determined that basically tacking in 4 more teams that may have been in the playoff race is going to set up, that kind of makes it a little more fair to just end the regular season. they're implementing a system for the draft lottery that's going to try to be as fair as possible to those teams that didn't get into the playoffs. But those seasons are done. So, we mentioned the Damian Lillard situation. If they're not supposed to be making the playoffs, he didn't want to play in meaningless games. Well, those players in the NHL that weren't going to be in the playoffs, their season's done. It's over. And those organizations will be, have a draft lottery like usual. Well, I mean, it's going to be a little different, but we won't get into the like percentages of the NHL draft lottery. I want people to at least stay awake. So, see, they didn't want to hear it either. So, basically, how this is going to work, you've got 12 teams from each conference. The top 4 seeds are going to get essentially a first round bye, but they're all going to play each other in a little round robin tournament to decide seeding for the top 4 in the conference. The other 8 teams are going to play kind of a first round best of 5 series to determine the who advances into the next round. It's going to be incredible to see this kind of play out in this big, like almost kind of a tournament style thing. They've announced that there's going to be 2 hub cities where this is all going to happen. I'd imagine one's going to be East and one's going to be West. The one out West that's been floated the most has been Las Vegas as the Western Conference tournament site. We mentioned Disney. You talk about a place where you could possibly control the environment as much as you can. Stick the players in a few of those hotels. Everything's closed off. Get them to the arena and back in Vegas. Get this thing done. We'll see what the East Hub city is going to be and how they're going to work that out. But that's still being figured out. They announced that so they're going to have a 3-week training camp for the players. Like there would, apparently the owners wanted a different length of training camp. The players wanted a different length, so they settled on 3 weeks. We got to compromise. They're going to get it going before the season starts. And they say that training camp won't start until after July 10th. So depending on how this whole coronavirus thing is going at that point, if everything is looking okay, looks like July 10th will be the day where they'll kick off those 3-week training camps, and then the season will get going. The playoffs will get going. And they'll, if everything goes to schedule, award a Stanley Cup in August or September. And then, they're talking about pushing out the start of the next season into possibly after the new year, which is probably a smart thing for the NHL to do anyway. I know that's been something that's been discussed by some people as a way to try to get more eyeballs on the game, instead of being up against the NBA for the entire season, baseball in the fall, college football, NFL, all those things, pushed out to the spring and, push it into the summer, and maybe more people will be interested in watching hockey. But anyway. Well,
that's one thing I wanted to ask you though, was do you think that's something that they should permanently do? Like there's a lot of businesses that are making adjustments to their business model during this time that they're not going to go back and change. You mentioned earlier, you made the joke about maybe there not being as many eyes on the NHL. Should this be something that they do permanently, in your opinion, to help themselves get more eyes on the game?
I do. It's an idea that's been floated even before all this, as a way, instead of having the season start, in October, November and running into the spring where it overlaps with so many other sports going on, shift that around. If you start it in the winter, which seems like more of an adequate time to start a hockey season, and run it out into the summer to where the only thing that it's really competing with is Major League Baseball. And it's not, they basically will have the buildings to themselves. The NBA seasons will be done at that point. I think they should. I also think another aspect of this is an opportunity for the NHL to toy with their TV broadcasts. I think hockey is the sport that suffers the most going from the live experience to the TV experience. I think anybody that's ever been to a professional hockey game, whether it's at the AHL level, like here in Cedar Park in the Austin area, or the Dallas Stars, or any high level hockey, has talked about how exciting the sport is and how much they get into it, but they just can't get into it watching it on TV. And I think this is an opportunity for the NHL to toy with, whether it's different camera angles, different broadcasts, something to try to.
How about bringing back the glowing puck?
Well, that's another, as goofy as that was back in the 90s and got kind of like ripped on a little bit. There's been talk about finding new ways to introduce like those kind of like advanced, whether it's advanced stats and different ways of displaying stuff during the game to give viewers a little bit more interest and a little bit more to kind of consume when they're watching the game. I think it's a big opportunity for the league here. I mean, it's, nobody asked for the coronavirus thing to happen, and so they're doing what they can. But I think this is a good opportunity for them to really reevaluate how they present themselves as a league and where they can find, their, kind of increase their foothold in, at least, in North American sports fans' minds.
If they don't do it now, if they don't take this opportunity to take those next steps, at least put themselves out there and make an attempt, there's not going to be a better time for the NHL to do this. So
Right.
They need to take advantage now, or it'll be a missed opportunity.
And I think that may explain why they're the first ones with a concrete plan. I know it's fingers crossed for everybody there that's, hoping that the plan works out along their timeline. But I think that probably explains a lot of why they're like, okay, we're going this date. This is how we're going to do it. We need to get out there and be out in front of this and not get lost in the shuffle.
Smart. I hope that's their plan. I like hockey. I've never really been a big NHL guy. I don't mind watching hockey on television, but you're right. I'd much rather watch it in person than with what the television product is at this moment. So anything that they could do once they come back, I'll watch playoff hockey anyway. Like playoff hockey, it's one of those things where I used to start watching the NBA around Christmas. That's usually what everybody does, Christmas time, and then you watch a little NBA, you slowly get into it, and then the playoffs come and you're into it. Hockey, I really don't. The playoffs are starting. Let me watch playoff hockey. Well, it's going to be playoff hockey from Jump Street now with the way that they're setting this up. That intensity, that mindset, that playoff mindset is there. How are you going to keep me interested throughout all of this? How are you going to keep me interested past this? And if they do a good job, who knows? Maybe that's something that, maybe I pick a team and latch onto somebody if I have that experience and it brings me to that level in these playoffs. They have an opportunity. Let's see if they do it.
Absolutely. It's not often that you can get it to where you get more teams into the tournament, everybody's coming back healthy, and you have this prime opportunity to really showcase the sport. And I'm excited. I mean, I think it's going to be fascinating. Even from the seeding games of the top 4 seeds in a little round robin tournament to just determine seeding is going to be must watch TV.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. I'm as a hockey player and fan, I'm really excited to tune in for that. So, well, Jay, we're up against it here on the break here for the first half of the show. As you mentioned earlier, we got a special guest coming up after the break. It's gonna be a pretty Longhorn heavy second half here. We're gonna get into some good stuff. But yeah, let's Jay, what do you think? Let's take a little break here and come back and kick it back off.
Quick pause for a good cause, and we'll be right back with you guys. Thanks for sticking around.
Thanks, everyone. See you in a sec.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey guys, welcome back. Hey man, welcome back. Hey everybody, welcome back to the old Bacon and Egg Show. Welcome back. We have a special guest, as you can see, for our We're Back segment to help us talk a little bit about how back Texas is this week. So with that, without further ado, I want to introduce our guest, Longhorn Insider Mike Holland. Mike, what's happening, man?
Hey, what's up, guys? Appreciate y'all having me on the show. Hope I can provide a little bit of insight as to what's going on with recruiting and just the overall landscape of Texas football. So just kind of a brief introduction to me, born and raised here. Brother played on the team from 92 to 95. So we've had season tickets since 92. I think I've missed 3 home games in that span. So you're looking at a lot of years, 25 plus years of, Texas football. So all the highs, all the lows, you guys know the deal. So excited to be on.
Love it, man. Glad to have you. This will be some good stuff, man.
I'm glad you let people know what the deal was, who we were hitting on here, because that's one of the reasons we wanted to have Mike on was his knowledge on the Longhorns just in general, and also his knowledge on the recruiting and what's going on in those circles as well. So why don't we start there, Mike? We were talking we've talked a little bit on this show about the way that this class has gone so far, and maybe I wanted to ask you, in terms of the expectations coming into 2020, the 2021 class, as opposed to the reality of that class, sort of what is the difference? What are the differences there, and what does that look like to you?
Yeah, so I think recruiting's changed a lot over the last few years. I think within the last 4 to 5 years, with the social media blowing up, a lot of these kids are getting offered earlier. I mean, you're seeing really getting evaluated on their freshman and sophomore year, and so you're seeing offers go out, a little bit earlier than what you saw, at least when I started following back in the early 2000s. I think Texas has been in a good position. I think we really set ourselves up well. When you look at the 2019 into that season, you look at us, obviously winning the Sugar Bowl against Georgia. Really that kind of set us up for a springboard to have an opportunity to have a massive 2021 class. And the 2021 class is not a joke. There's a lot of really good prospects. We kind of finished off the 2020 recruiting season, that class, really well. What we look for is obviously kind of what I like to call war daddies. So these guys that are really game changers, the guys that you want to get about 10 to 12 of these guys each class. If you look at 2005, 2009 national titles, you're looking at those recruiting classes beforehand, and you're seeing, anywhere from minimum of 8 guys to about 12 guys that are just these really high rated players. And obviously you're going to have some of your lower rated players that you're going to develop. But that's why the Alabamas, Ohio States, and Clemson's, it's just, the root of college football is recruiting. So you got to get these guys every year, because not all of them are going to pan out, but the more you get, the higher chance of success on the field. So, as far as where we are in 2021, it looked like we were going to have a massive start, just with Jalen Milroe committing. He's the quarterback out of Katy, and he's been real open about, trying to get this class built up. But I think as you saw us kind of, stumble a little bit last season, some of these guys, maybe looking elsewhere, LSU, Ohio State's got a pretty big footprint. So what do you guys think as far as, where the landscape is right now?
Yeah, I think I'll kind of, I guess, a little bit of frustration is the development. We talk about the quality that's come in over the last few years, really since Tom Herman came in. I know it's probably a little unfair to maybe pass full judgment on his talent as a developer of recruits, but I think that's been the thing. It's you see these high recruiting rankings nationally, and the results haven't quite matched up with what's on the field and what's been coming out in the NFL draft. And I think, at least for these classes going forward, like we've mentioned on this show before, like Princely Uman-Milan, Tunmisi that went to Ohio State, or is committed to Ohio State, like these players that are going, well, I'm going to go where I'm going to get developed. I mean, it's so I guess while it's nice to have the recruits coming in, that lack of development's a little bit frustrating.
And another thing we've talked about along those same lines, though, we think that as Tom Herman's recruiting classes are all coming to the end of their cycles, that those NFL draft numbers will start to pick up a little bit, and that will only help get these more of those, Mike, as you call them, war daddies. They're going to see that, okay, it is okay to go to Texas again and think that I'm going to get developed to be an NFL draft pick at a high level. Texas hasn't had many draft picks in any round over the last 5 or 6 years, but specifically looking to be some of those draft picks in the higher rounds. And you see Herman has turned that around a little bit in terms of that development. But Mike, when you look at getting some of those higher level players in, some of those 4- and 5-star guys that maybe Texas has thought they had a shot at, and maybe they've just missed out over the last month or so, players making decisions to go other places. Are there any players that stand out to you that Texas just flat missed on?
Yeah, kind of looking at the overall landscape, I think Texas had a better opportunity to get, 12 to 15 of the top 20 guys in the state. And that's, that's when you're really holding down the fort. I think as, the last 2-3 months have gone on, a lot of it, I think, has to do with the NFL draft. You're seeing, a lot of guys getting drafted out of, the Ohio States, the Oklahomas. So you're seeing these guys, not quite go to Texas because you're not quite putting up the numbers, in the draft that these kids want to see. And it's make no mistake about it. I mean, these kids, they have dreams of playing in the NFL. So I think, we had opportunities on some of these guys. Some of these guys we can probably circle back around because you know how recruiting is. It's a kid commits one day and then 3 weeks later he's gone somewhere else. So
Well, who are some of those guys, Mike, that we think we could circle back around on? Some of those bigger names.
So some of those guys, kind of want to start with, Donovan Jackson. He's a guard out of Houston. Houston's always, been a major focal point. Obviously, Houston and Dallas area with getting some of this premium talent. Now, where's he going? As of right now, if it ended today, it's Ohio State. And, who can really blame him? But the big thing is, when we kind of started off talking about Jalen Milroe, the quarterback, he's from the Houston area, and he's got a relationship with a lot of these guys. So I think if Texas can really have a good season, and really the expectation should honestly be at least 9 wins. Anything below that is, it's just not acceptable with what's coming back in the Big 12 and what we have coming back, and finally a first-time senior quarterback. I don't know when the last time that was. Felt like forever. So so this is a guy that he's a mauler. You got to have these guys. We look at our 05 team. You got Justin Blaylock, 5-star guard. You've got Casey Studdard. You've got these guys that are nationally ranked, and these guys rank 16th right now on Rivals.com. These are guys that you have to get. So kind of the saying right now is in Milroe we trust. Especially in a position of need, because offensive line has not fared well recently. So what you guys kind of take on the Houston area recruiting and how we can obviously get in the door on some of these guys.
Well, the Donovan Jackson mentioned that's a really interesting one because of him going to Episcopal, which is a school that Texas has kind of struggled with over the last few years. The amazing receiver that came out of there that's at Alabama, Jalen Waddle, just the speedster. Like, that's a guy from Episcopal that Texas had its sights set on and couldn't pull. I believe Walker Little, the guy that ended up he's on the Stanford offensive line, that's another one from Episcopal that Texas just couldn't close the deal on. And I think one of his parents is an alum, so that's kind of that case of like, oh, he had a parent that went to Texas and all the things from the Houston area and all that stuff's lined up and just can't close the deal on. So it's interesting to see, Donovan Jackson on there, another Houston Episcopal player that, hopefully the door is still open there, but Ohio State's going to be a tough one to pull that kid from.
Well, and, when we're talking about offensive linemen and we talk about the Brockermeyer brothers, those are two guys that are legacies. And why is Texas not – I understand for some of the reasons that we've already discussed, but Mike – does Texas have a shot at one or both? Are they a package deal? And does Texas have a shot at either of them?
Yeah, I think we're still in great shape with these guys. A lot of smoke coming out of the Alabama camp right now. Obviously, these guys are churning out multiple offensive linemen every year, it seems like. So you can't really fault them for looking at the best fit. But I think with Texas's recruiting right now, you're going to see, once the season starts, I think a lot more guys become more interested. Obviously people want to play for a winner. And if having Sam Cosmi coming back, rated super high, and you've got a couple other guys coming back like Kerstetter, having these guys have success and then, potentially being, first or, second or third round picks. It goes a long way for these kids. So I think, with the Brockermeyers, you have to get these kids. Their dad played at UT. He's an amazing offensive lineman. You can't let these guys, get away from you. And even if they were to commit to Alabama early in the process, they still have a long way to go. So I think, nothing's really set in stone right now. As we kind of look at Tommy here, I mean, 10th overall rated player regardless of position. I mean, this kid is just a beast. So, and his brother's not bad either. He's one of the top rated centers. So getting these two guys, to go along with, you've got Hayden Connor right now out of Katy. You can really build a foundation, really set something special here. But it really starts with these two kids. So, I think you have to make sure you get these guys in.
Mike, a question for you. Your opinion on this, I guess, let's say in a situation where the Brockermeyer brothers do commit somewhere, let's say Alabama. To you, is that more about them wanting to go play for a program like Alabama, or is that more of an indictment on Herman not being able to close a deal on legacies like the Brockermeyers?
I hate to say it, but I think it's an indictment. I mean, mom and dad, their brother goes to UT. So, I mean, you can't tell me that this isn't a legacy deal. It's how is Texas going to perform? These kids don't want to play for, a 7-win team. I don't blame them. Their dad knows that the best way to get out there and get a high-level draft pick is exposure. Playing on good teams, it gives you even more exposure. I think some of the draft classes you see guys that maybe aren't the best players of their positions get elevated because they're on teams that are even, really, really good. I think it's a huge indictment. I hate to say it, but he's got to get these kids this year. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is one of those cases where it's hard to use the kind of the Alabama or SEC kind of excuse of like, oh, they just want to go play, and be exposed for the draft and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I think he's got to get these two. I think this might be the most important, I guess you can say, pair of recruits probably of his tenure at Texas. Because like you mentioned, you build that foundation on the offensive line. These are the two guys that can really set that tone for the years to come for him.
For sure. So, Mike, while we have you, a couple more questions. You mentioned earlier in your mind that 9 wins was what you thought was the minimum this to have a successful, or to be deemed a successful season. Is there a way that Tom Herman loses his job this year? And if so, what does that season look like to you that would cause Tom Herman to lose his job?
Yeah, I think the seat's a little warm right now. Obviously, the Utah win and the Alamo Bowl was nice. Top 10 opponent. They put a bunch of guys in the draft, so that got a little bit of momentum going. But I think at Texas, I mean, you got to be winning 9-10 games, consistently. So if he can get back to that 9-10 win level, obviously he's safe. But I mean, you start dipping into the 7 wins, even an 8-win season, it's going to be really tough. Texas is used to winning, and we have the money to go out and get whoever we want. So if you're not performing, it might be time to move on. Having said that, though, I think hands down this year is the best year we're going to have to win the Big 12 in about the last 5 years. Just you've got a returning senior quarterback, ton of experience. You've got a stable of backs. Your offensive line, you returned 4 or 5 starters. You got a ton in the secondary coming back. These kids are older now. Your defensive line, you've got a couple of studs up front with Osai and, Snacks. Coburn's going to be a second-year player, so he's going to get better. Your receivers, I mean, you just look at it. You've got a lot of talent coming back. So, if you miss out this year, you're kind of restarting all over again. Next year with the new quarterback and, you're probably going to lose some of these guys to the NFL. You're kind of just starting over from scratch without any momentum to carry into recruiting. And I think something like that, a 7-8 win season, I think we'll take a strong look at, potentially moving on. So what are you guys' thoughts as far as, 7 or 8 wins?
Yeah, I mean, I think an 8-win regular season, while it's an improvement on a 7-win regular season this past year, with everything that you just mentioned, everybody returning, the experience at quarterback, all the talent across the board, I think that's a disappointment. I mean, I don't know if it's enough for him to lose his job, but I mean, I think it would feel like a disappointment, even though technically it's a game improvement. over the previous season, because that means what they're probably losing to LSU, Oklahoma, and then there's 2 other losses somewhere in there that probably shouldn't happen. I mean, I think in terms of him losing his job, I think it's got to be some kind of something similar to just absolutely cratering out like in Charlie's last season. And that's without a Sam Ehlinger injury. I think if Sam gets hurt and misses a huge chunk of time, I think it's kind of all bets are off. There's kind of that excuse there of losing that player. But I think if Sam stays healthy and they win 6 games or something of that sort, that's bad. That's really bad.
This is the year that we learn whether or not Tom Herman is the person for this position. This is the year. Everything is lined up for him to be successful. Everything is lined up for Texas to take a step forward. I think they need to be playing for a conference title this year. They need to be in the conference championship game. And that's the disappointment. If they're not there, if they're not a top 2 team in this conference this year, that's a disappointment to me. And we'll know if Tom Herman is the guy after this season, because he won't. If he doesn't reach that, if he doesn't get there for me, the way that everything's lined up, it's not the guy.
Right. No, I completely agree with both of you guys. Yeah, this season set up well because you look at who's gone. OU. It's we're going to be having for the first time it feels like a non-senior quarterback, an unproven player, and we're bringing in the senior quarterback. You look at Baylor, Matt Rule's gone. There's just not a lot of excuses that you can make for not winning at least 9 games this year. It would be foolish to think that anything under 9 would be acceptable. So that's just kind of where I'm at with the season. We've been waiting for this season for a long time. This is kind of the build-up season for the past 2 years of playing. If you look at the roster the last 2 years, the best players have been freshmen and sophomores, really, especially on the defensive end. So I think now these kids are going to be juniors, seniors, and you get a senior quarterback that's got a ton of starts, and it's just barring an injury, obviously, to the quarterback. You got to be playing for the Big 12 title. And honestly, I don't know a reason why you, other than all the faith that national media has with Oklahoma, I don't see why you wouldn't at least be up there in consideration, obviously, as preseason Big 12 champs. So that's just kind of my take on it. When you have expectations like that and you're going to come off 7 or 8 wins, it's just, it's really unfathomable, honestly. So.
Yeah, I think given the schedule and everybody coming back, I think a 10-2 type season is perfectly within reason, right? Because that's also taking into consideration a trip to Baton Rouge, and as we've discussed before, we'll see what LSU is with kind of a revamped, coaching staff in a way, and a different cast of characters coming into play. So, but still, you go to Baton Rouge and lose a game, there's not a ton of shame in that. And so, but OU's OU, we'll see what they're bringing. But other than that, there shouldn't be. 9-3, 10-2, I think is perfectly within reason as an expectation for this year.
Yeah, I honestly think that's kind of a floor for the season, honestly. Yeah. So.
Well, and if Herman doesn't do it this year, it's going to be even harder to turn that corner next year for all those reasons you mentioned earlier.
Yep.
You have the senior quarterback this year. This is the year to take the turn, to turn that corner and to build that momentum. It has to happen this year.
Yeah, if you look at it, I think the first 5 or 6 games is really going to tell the tale on the 2021 recruiting class. Because obviously with signing day, number 1 signing day, being late December now, these kids are making declarations earlier than they've been doing. They've been getting, obviously, their letters of intent in on that day. So you're seeing 80-90% of the players being signed. On those particular, that first signing day. So I think you have to come out super strong if you can, put it down in LSU, and then also come out and, I would say you can, if you won one of those 2 games, you're going to put yourself in a really, really good position to, kind of really set this thing up to where you can go out and get 8 to 9, 10 of these guys, maybe get a couple of flips in there to where now you're not only having a successful season, but now you're building off of that. and going into the future with these war daddies that you got to get to. It's not enough to play for the Big 12 championship at Texas. You need to be playing for national titles, especially with the recruiting grounds and the landscape that we currently have. So that's just kind of my take on the situation. We'll see what happens. Hopefully there's a season. So let's pray for that first. Missing sports right now.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, I know, Mike. You're so desperate for sports that you've been watching NASCAR. So that's.
Oh man,
I don't want to get into that.
That's another conversation for another day.
Yeah.
Hey, Mike, we really appreciate you taking the time to come on with us today, man. This is great stuff. This is it's the reason we brought you on, man. You brought it. That's exactly the type of stuff we wanted on this show, to help inform people and to let them know what's going on. So thanks so much for coming on, Mike. We really appreciate it, and we're going to do it again soon, all right?
All right, guys. Appreciate it. Y'all have a good one.
Thanks,
All
man.
right, Mike. Thanks.
We'll see you. All right, man. That's good stuff.
That's good stuff.
Yeah, we're gonna have Mike back quite often, I'm thinking, because there's a ton that we'll be able to get into deeper as the recruiting season rolls along, as we get closer to football, as we get closer to basketball and all the other sports on the 40 acres. He's a great insider resource with a lot of inside contacts over there at the university. So
Yeah. No, it's I was excited to be able to have Mike on. I've actually been working to get him on over the past couple of shows, and just hasn't worked out with scheduling. So I'm glad we were able to get him on today to talk horns, and he is going to be one of those guys we'll go back to quite a bit. So hope you guys enjoyed having that guest on there to bring you a little content there, a little Longhorn content.
I love it. And I guess we didn't ask. I guess we should have asked how back is Texas this week. I guess that can, we'll get it next time.
Well, I think they're just as back as they were last week.
Yeah, I agree. Not any more back. Well, let's move along here. We got a little bit. We got a few minutes here to kind of get through some things. I know we won't have Toro Queso coming on today. He's got prior engagements apparently, so he won't be on to talk about the Texans. So
yeah, he told me. So WWE has extras in the crowd now, so they don't have to just have an empty arena there at their tapings in Florida. Toro Queso got a gig over there as an extra in the crowd at the WWE taping. So he
made it.
He's still up there in Florida taking care of that stuff. But yeah, he made it, man. Can't believe he got to the big stage.
He always wanted to get to the big show, and now he's there. His dreams have come true. So
I mean, he was in the crowd, but he was still there.
Yeah, well, I'd be curious to hear if he tried to actually get involved in any of the action, but no.
I'm sure we'll hear about it when we talk to Toro Queso again. But I know he did want to talk about J.J. Watt this week in our very famous "What Would Bill O'Brien Do?"
Well, we'll pose it like this. What would Bill O'Brien do when J.J. Watt says he's not going to ask for a contract extension? Because isn't that what happened this week? I guess he was that question was posed to him, or I guess you frame it a little bit better for me here. You know a little bit more about quite a bit more about what is involved with this J.J. Watt situation.
Oh no, it got brought up, whether or not he would be asking, looking to get an extension, looking to sign something long term with Houston, and he said no, I'm not going to be doing that. I'm not going to ask for an extension. I have 2 years left on my deal. With everything that's been going on, he understands that his health has been a factor. He's only played in 32 of the last 64 games over the last 4 seasons. So he understands. And one of those years he played all 16 games. And he was an all-pro that year. When he's playing 16 games, he's still one of the best players in the league, hands down. However, the remaining 16 games out of the remaining 3 seasons combined, that's the tough part. So I think he even has an understanding that maybe I need to just focus on what I'm doing right now. Or maybe he wants to finish his time out in Houston and look for greener pastures at the end of his career. What do you say about that?
Yeah, I guess the cynical side of me thinks that as much as JJ Watt is a stand-up guy and all the good work that he's done, not just on the football field, but for the city of Houston and in Texas and everything, like it's a good thing to say to like, hey, I'm not going to worry about the extension. I know that I've had injuries, and like kind of putting it on his shoulders a little bit of like this kind of, you know, oh, I don't want to ask for more money and just be hurt and like hurt the franchise kind of thing, like this altruistic kind of motive. He's looking out for his own self-interest here, as he should. And I think there's a couple things at play. I think he knows that, or he probably has the feeling, seeing the way that Bill O'Brien is kind of, I don't want to say dismantled some of this team, but you know what he's done with how they've handled the DeAndre Hopkins thing. I feel like this is JJ looking at it and going, all right, I'm going to play 2020, and essentially I'm going to be in a contract year in 2021. I wouldn't be all that surprised if 2020 is his last season as a Houston Texan, given what we know. I don't think they're going to let him go into a season where he can walk for free at the end of 2021. I think it's going to play out just like it did with Clowney, just like it did with Dwayne Brown. And I could see him respectfully asking to be moved to a different organization where he could probably sign a new deal and have a chance to really contend for a Super Bowl.
I agree. He had the 2 years left on his contract. Both years are not guaranteed. It's he's $15.5 million this year, $17.5 million next year. So technically, the Texans, if something happened, I don't see how you cut JJ Watt. But Bill O'Brien has already done some crazy stuff, so I don't see that being the end result here. But I also could see he plays this year if he's not happy with the direction things are going, because his contract isn't guaranteed next year anyway. Maybe he just straight up asked to be released, because I don't think JJ Watt would get $17.5 million on the open market a season right now.
No, I mean, the 2021 season is going to be his 10th in the league, right? He was a 2011 draft pick, if I remember correctly. And as great as he's been, those numbers with injuries don't lie. And, you know, you're talking about a guy, a very physical type player, and 10 years, a decade in the league.
So maybe this is JJ Watt saying, I'm going to play out my contract and then I'm done. I'm going to retire a Texan.
Yeah.
My body's beaten up. My wife is playing in where does she get traded to? I think Chicago.
I think she's in Chicago, yeah.
She's playing in the soccer league in Chicago. I want to spend time with her and support her.
And he's from Wisconsin, so it's, you know, that would make some sense.
So, I mean, I'll never say a bad word about JJ Watt. So, and I know you wouldn't either. So this is one of those things where it's just, we don't know how this is going to pan out, but I really hope for sure, I bet you do too, that this needs to end as cleanly and as non-Bill O'Brien-ish as possible.
Well, I will say, I think if it doesn't end that way, I think we know exactly who should take the responsibility for it not ending that way. If this thing ends ugly, we can essentially guarantee that it's down to Bill O'Brien either trying to, you know, pull one over on Watt and his agent or something of that sort, because I think everything, and you know, of course we don't know these guys personally, but I think everything that we've seen from JJ Watt through his tenure in Houston and his, you know, going back to his Wisconsin days and stuff like that, shows that he's not going to be the one that's going to cause any kind of issues with the franchise, that's going to hang his jersey up, you know, in the next however many years. So yeah, I hope it doesn't come to that. It's, you know, I'd support him. I hope he, you know, has an opportunity to go play in a Super Bowl, whether that's with the Texans or with, you know, anybody. I know his brothers play for the Steelers. You never know. He might.
Definitely something to think about with them already both being under contract in Pittsburgh.
Yep.
Why not? You know, play a season up there with your brothers at the end of your career. You know, he would go up there. I'm sure that he'd play on the cheap, and
oh yeah,
that's a dream of theirs. Who knows? Maybe this is all a part of the plan. Who knows? But either way, we'll see. Last thing, I just want to touch on Texans wise. when we were talking all the offensive linemen and their salaries a couple of weeks ago. Zach Fulton, the right guard, was the only one that didn't have any guaranteed money. Well, that's changed. He restructured his contract, and now he gets a $1.5 million signing bonus, $2.5 million base salary in 2020, which is fully guaranteed, and he'll get a $1 million bonus for being on the 90-man roster, which is all but guaranteed. So basically, the guy went from having no guaranteed money to and having a $7 million deal. The contract was $7 million, but it wasn't guaranteed. He restructured it, got some guaranteed money, and that basically slots him into that right guard spot. So that's at least they're taking care of the business there, and everybody's ready to go. That offensive line should be ready to go.
Good, and good for him. That's good business there. I wish there was more discussion about Bill O'Brien pulling those kind of deals, because I think that's good work.
Absolutely,
and good for the player too.
Yeah.
Well, we had a lot that we want to get to today, but we're kind of tight on time. I know we want to get to our listener question this week. I know that Jay, that's one that you received. You received a question from one of our listeners. You want to dive into that? Yeah,
I received a question from one of our listeners down in New Braunfels, Texas. So thank you, New Braunfels, for listening. That's Kale down there in New Braunfels.
I think we're the number one rated show in the New Braunfels area, right? I think we're
the number one rated YouTube show with a breakfast themed title in New Braunfels, Texas.
That's between 60 and 75 minutes usually, right? Like we kind of have that market corner.
Yeah,
okay.
we have it cornered. We're those dudes.
We try. We're here for the people.
We are the show of the people. So look, the question from Kale was, with Tom Brady now down in Tampa Bay, who is the best quarterback in the AFC East? And we pulled up a list of the top of all the starters and then a couple of backups. Kerry, it ain't pretty.
No, it's really not. I'll take a stab at trying to rank these real quick by team.
All right.
I think I've definitely, this is interesting. It feels weird saying this. I think the worst quarterback group. Oh, I won't say quarterback group, but starting quarterback in the AFC East is got to be whoever the Patriots roll out there. As of right now, whether that's Jarrett Stidham, who we don't know anything about. His college career, he was a big-time recruit that went to Baylor and then ended up at Auburn, and we don't really know that much about him. He was never really consistent enough to really peg him at that. Or the other option is Air Hoyer, Houston Texans legend. Took the Texans to the playoffs before, going full. He flew the friendly skies with the Kansas City Chiefs in that 4-pick playoff game. What a legend. So I definitely got to say, whoever Belichick rolls out there between Stidham and Hoyer, I think that's at the bottom of the division for me. I say all that. Someone's probably going to mark the tape and come back in the winter, and after Stidham puts up an MVP, Matt Castle filling in for Brady type season,
14-2 or something like that.
Yeah, I go, see, Stidham's pretty good. And I go, oh well, okay, I guess I was wrong on that one. So I'm going Patriots is the worst. This is where it gets a little tricky. I think I'm going to have to go with the Jets next. I know Sam Darnold's got talent, but we just haven't seen it put together consistently. This is where it gets a little tricky because I can't base this off of potential, so I'm going to have to go with the Dolphins as the second best potential starting quarterback. Ryan Fitzpatrick, he's another Houston Texans legend, and NFL legend, Harvard legend. He, the bearded wonder, took Texans fans on that magical beard ride that one year to the, he's great. So, but the thing is, I think
it's great to take a ride on that beard.
Oh, love the beard ride. And so it's better than flying Air Hoyer, but it's a more smoother ride. But
for sure.
I think Fitzpatrick is fine. I think he has done enough to show that he's maybe a little more of a steadier hand to a degree than Darnold, at least in terms of reliability. We just don't know about Tua in the NFL yet and his health. If Tua is everything that he has shown and that he's promised to be and all the potential's fulfilled, I think Tua is the best quarterback in the division by a mile. That said, I think off of what if I had to ride with any of these guys right now, it's probably going to be Josh Allen at Buffalo. And I think this is something we'll probably get into as we get closer to NFL season with kind of predicting these divisions. And I think Buffalo is the best team in the division. I think they are in pole position to actually win the AFC East. And I think Josh Allen's a big reason behind that. He's been durable. He's been fairly consistent. And I just like what they've kind of put together there.
I'm going to start there with Allen because I'm a big fan of Josh Allen. He plays with a chip on his shoulder. You know, everybody knows that he wasn't the most accurate quarterback in college. He hasn't been the most accurate quarterback in the NFL. But one of the things that he's done is he's really worked on his game, and he's a bruiser. He's one of those guys that he's just going to get out there. He's going to get you rushing yards the hard way. He's going to beat up people. He's going to beat up defenders. He's going to be able to take hits, even in the pocket. But Allen is one of those guys that I love to watch develop because even though he was such an early pick, he was still kind of written off as one of those guys that wasn't going to, he's already going to be a bust. There's no way he's going to be successful. And he's really worked hard to improve his game. He's the leader of the locker room in Buffalo. There's not a doubt about it. And he's getting better. I really like Josh Allen a lot. But to rank him real quickly, and then we can move on, I think if of the six that you mentioned, I'm going to go in this order in terms of who I would want to start for my team tomorrow, starting at 6. Hoyer, Stidham. So both of the Patriots are at the bottom for me. Hoyer, Stidham. I would go Fitzpatrick, Tua, Darnold, Allen. I guess that's the way that I would go. I mean, I think Darnold is very talented, like you said. I think the Jets really haven't done a super job of keeping him. I mean, the mononucleosis in the middle of the season didn't help Sam.
Yeah.
But
quit kissing people, man.
Yeah, no kidding. Gosh.
Wear a mask.
But anyways, I'm a big fan of Allen as well. It's interesting that we both landed on Allen there. But yeah, for me, it's Allen, Darnold. I would take Tua over the other three, like tomorrow. I just would. Well, I'm anxious to see him play.
Yeah, and I think he's going to play this season. And and that's what if he's everything that he's supposed to be, then I think he's the best quarterback in the division. But real quick on this note, what if the Patriots sign Cam Newton? Where does that fit into that AFC East conversation? I'm not going off of any. I mean, I know he hadn't signed anywhere yet, and I don't know if he's going to sign with New England or if there's even a rumor about that. But
I'd rather have Cam over any. I'd rather have Cam over any of those guys. Any single one of them.
So that would, as a team, move the Patriots to the top of that AFC East quarterback situation for you.
Well, just off of, if we're talking starters and who would be expected to play a whole season, absolutely. Yeah.
I'd have to agree.
I think Allen's with Allen, and if Allen takes another step forward, I think it's close. But and Darnold still has an opportunity. Darnold's still learning the game too.
Yeah.
I mean, he absolutely has a chance to continue to evolve as a quarterback to take another step. And it's going to be an interesting year in the AFC East to watch these young quarterbacks develop because every single one of them is. We still don't have an idea of who these guys are going to be as NFL quarterbacks.
Yeah.
None of them, including obviously the rookies. So, well, Kerry, we want to real quick. Do we want to rapid fire through the breakfast wrap here and put a cork in it?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's fire through these. Yeah, let's go. Breakfast wrap time.
Right. Perfect. Let's go. All right. James Harden has lost like 10 to 15 pounds since this pandemic started. Good idea to do this in the middle of a season, I should say, to have to retrain your body, or?
I don't know if I'd call it a good idea, maybe, but I mean, I guess it's those steak and shrimp lunch specials that he's missing out on that probably contributed to that.
At the local establishments?
At the local establishments, I'd have to think Tillman Fertitta's probably pulling a few strings for this Disney World NBA thing to get James his own gentleman's establishment to get him rounded into form. So he'll probably get that 10 to 15 pounds back before basketball starts.
I think James would have taken care of that on his own, to be honest with you. Power 5 conference commissioners they're urging Congress to speed up legislation on name, image, and likeness to allow players to be compensated for that. All of a sudden, there's a fire lit under these guys. I mean,
Yeah,
that.
interesting.
Yeah.
Fascinating that as money is drying up coming into athletic departments, whether through ticket sales or coronavirus stuff, any of that, it's like, oh, now that the players got to get their money somehow, right? So it's fascinating.
Yeah, imagine that. What else we got, Kerry?
Let's see real quick. We've got the Astros paying their prospects through August, a $400 a week stipend for Astros prospects, I think through August 31st. What do you think about that?
I think it's nice that they're continuing to give their players a stipend. I wonder if they're doing anything else to help them in terms of lodging or anything else that might have been, it's $400 a week for anybody to live on is tough, but I don't know all the things that are how else the Astros may be taking care of some of these players, but I'm glad that they're doing at least something and taking care of them and a little bit financially. What do you say?
Agreed. Yeah, it's better than nothing. I mean, again, we don't know also like contract situations for some of these guys that might be top tier prospects, or guys that bounce back and forth between the big club and in the minor leagues. You think about someone like, I don't know, Miles Straw or something like that, how does that play into that? Their major league contracts. We mentioned that earlier about the pay cuts. I think there's a lot going on there, but I do agree it's better than nothing, and it's a step in the right direction.
For sure. EA, Electronic Arts, and the NFL agreed on an extension for the Madden football game series through 2025. Kerry, $1.6 billion with a B dollars. What's your favorite? Do you have a favorite sports game? And is it football or related?
It's FIFA for me. It's FIFA, which is an EA game. Which there's already a side note on the Madden thing is that apparently 2K Sports has signed a deal to re-energize, but like reintroduce the 2K NFL football games that were popular back in, I guess it was the early to mid 2000s. This brings a competitor to EA to hopefully. I know one of the gripes about any of these EA games over the last however many years is that there hasn't been much improvement on a year-to-year basis. And I think putting a competitor out there with Madden to try to boost the games and make them a little more entertaining and worth your money is good. But yeah, I'm a big FIFA player and used to be real big into NHL, EA Sports. I know that was a popular NHL 94 was one of the great get a group together and have a tournament type video games of all time. So
any excuse to hear the Brass Bonanza play.
Oh yeah, which for those that don't know is our break music here on the Bacon and Eggs show. So famous Hartford Whalers fight song. Just a little insider info there. But
there you go.
What else you got, Jay?
So last thing in the breakfast wrap. Oh no, sorry, second to last thing in the breakfast wrap. I know you mentioned before we came on the JT Daniels transfer. Quickly, what were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it just was something that caught my attention. JT Daniels was I believe a 5-star recruit. He was the quarterback that started for USC when they were in Austin 2 seasons ago as a freshman. Because he was the one that replaced Sam Darnold, who played against Texas the year before at the Coliseum. But all the promise in the world, 5-star recruit, and from LA, I believe. This was a huge get for USC at the time. He was kind of tabbed to be this next Trojan NFL quarterback prospect. Injuries derailed a season last year. He's headed to Georgia. I think it's kind of out of the blue. It wasn't this kind of like, oh, well, he's talking about transferring and goes into the portal and there's this kind of recruitment process. There's an announcement, JT Daniels to Georgia. Not a bad get for the Bulldogs. Interesting times.
Well, you gotta, in the SEC, it's just you got to do anything you can. And Georgia has been, near the top of that in that conversation. Georgia's been holding their own in that conference. So what do you try to do? What do you see when you see in Oklahoma every year that's getting these quarterback transfers, and every single year Oklahoma is in or near the college football playoff, and it's like, okay, what do we need to do? Let's figure out a way to get somebody in here that we're not starting completely over. We know exactly the type of player that we're getting. We can build an offense around this guy. It's a great get for Georgia. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Anything else you got, Jay?
Last thing, man. So for all my wrestling fans, Mike Tyson, who recently on Instagram posted some pictures of himself, training and videos of him training and stuff like that. And everyone's like, man, is Mike getting back in the ring? Well, Mike showed up on All Elite Wrestling, AEW. He showed up there a few weeks ago, actually, and has been involved in a couple of storylines. But now they're calling back a storyline to him from a decade ago in WWE with him and Chris Jericho. So I just wanted to bring that up because I knew when I saw Mike training again, I was like, man, Mike is getting ready to whoop somebody's ass. Well, Mike was getting cut up again so he could rip off his shirt in the middle of a wrestling ring and look good. So I was happy to see Mike again. I always like to see Mike Tyson involved in stuff. But it was just interesting to see him pop up again on, and not even WWE television. It's the new competitor, All Elite Wrestling.
Yeah, I bet. I think I saw that clip of him working out and boxing around a little bit. It was like, good Lord, Mike looks great. Like what? Just he doesn't look like he's lost a step.
Get
him back in the ring.
You see clips of him every now and then, like giving young fighters like 2 minutes of advice, and you see, move. And it's like Mike still got it. I feel like he could get in the ring and do some damage if he wanted to.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Why though? At this point,
Yeah. Well, yeah, that'll be a fun one to watch. Well, I might have
We'll
a
see how that
recurring Mike
develops.
Tyson segment on this show.
Well, and if he actually gets in the ring and wrestles like they say he might, we'll see. That would be must-see television to me, to see him in any ring, even as it's a performance that it would be. But it would obviously be pretty cool to see Mike Tyson, quote unquote, competing in a ring again. Absolutely.
Well, I think that's about it. What we got for today. I know a little extra show time here doesn't hurt anybody. So hopefully everybody enjoyed, our special segment, deeper dive into Longhorns recruiting and expectations. And I think Jay and I think I can speak for Jay by saying that we appreciate everybody that's been tuning in. We're setting all kinds of records, metrics are through the roof.
Absolutely.
Just
unprecedented numbers we're doing here.
Unprecedented. Just amazing numbers. So we encourage everybody to keep tuning in, keep liking the show and subscribing and submitting questions and feedback and all that good stuff. And it's kind of a side note, side note, I guess, related to the show, but kind of a major thing, but everything that's going on, as we meet here on May 30th with everything that's been going on this week around the country. And, we just hope to kind of provide a little bit of a distraction for everybody out there that is tuning in and, give you an opportunity to think about some sports for a little bit with all this, the difficult stuff that's happening around us right now. And I can speak for myself on this, and those who know me know where I stand. I'm not going to use this as a platform or a place for me to kind of go into my feelings on things, but just know that it's in our thoughts, and it's something that's we're walking around with and dealing with today. And but we hope to get through this and provide a little bit of something extra, a little bit of distraction, a little bit of joy, and talk about some sports for a little bit. So
this was one of the reasons that we wanted to start this show was, what better way to give ourselves a little distraction during the pandemic? Well, now there's a lot more going on than just that in our country, and we want to. This is an outlet for us, but we hope this can be an outlet for you too, to listen to us do something that we really love to do and talk about things that we really love to talk about. And hopefully this could give you an hour plus of your time to sort of unplug from that and escape all of those things, and hope we were able to do that for you today. We really do appreciate you guys listening and all of your feedback and comments and support. So thanks for that. Kerry, it's a pleasure, man. We'll do it again.
Always, always. It'll be June next time we get together. So.
Jeez, amazing.
And we'll be that much closer to sports opening back up, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of news this week for us to hit on. But yeah, man, it's been a good one. Let's do it again.
Good stuff, man.
Later.
ATX representing. Fatal, baby.
All in 06 on a Saturday. Can the drip and swing down, let me